football fantasy? Keeping it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? Keeping it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keeping it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? You come home after a long day, you need football in your life the TTNL way. You tap on your phone after fantasy play. Pause, not like that before you take it the wrong way. You have an idea what players to draft, then tap on a beer like genuine draft. Study all the players, look close at the stats. A QB first, then a top running back. First you hear Cool Kennedy audio, then on your screen you see Jackle and Claudio. It's a take, never lies production. They keep it fantasy with Ivan's porno production. Keeping it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keeping it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keeping it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keeping it fantasy, it's a football fantasy.
Yo! This is Claudio the Barber, and this is TTNL's Keepin It Fantasy. What a wild week 2. So much to get into. Let's just get to it. We got a lot to jam in here.
Hey,
Chris Jackle. Hey,
what up?
Ivan, the man.
What up?
What up, bro? What's going on?
What's going on, guys? Glad to be here again. Claudio, turn that down. I can't hear myself.
Oh, my bad.
It's like black.
He's feeling it, man. That music.
I know you're feeling it, but I was like, damn, turn it down a bit. No, but anyway, what's up, guys? Good afternoon, good evening. Good evening. I almost said afternoon. Good evening. How you guys doing? Another week in fantasy. I'm happy to see you guys. Happy to see everybody in the chat. What's going on?
Fucking Tuesday night, 10 o'clock fantasy show. Here we are, man. Claudio, how we feeling, buddy? Ivan, how are we?
Yeah, I mean, even though I lost a few of my leagues this week, but, whatever. You got to just push on. Just like the Bears, we're going to push on to the next week and look at this waiver wire and look at these injuries and everything that we gotta get into here.
No doubt. And let's just go ahead and recap. I know we got a lot to talk about. I know people wanted to hear us talk about Bears. We're not going to be talking a whole hell of a lot of Bears because we have a great show tomorrow on the network, Keeping It 100 with Olin Kreutz as a guest. So it's, we're going to keep it to a minimum. We may mention some Bears stuff here and there, so pay attention, but it's going to be a lot of around the league, a lot of wide receiver talk. Jackal had a great question he brought up to our little chat we got going on, the fantasy chat, and I thought it was going to be a great conversation for this show. But first, let's go ahead and recap last week.
Yeah.
Big week in fantasy. I just want to go ahead and let's start with the biggest game of the week. And I didn't think it was going to be the biggest game of the week, but it ended up being the biggest game of the week. Ravens Dolphins, so much fantasy points coming out of that game. Tua, 6 touchdowns, ridiculous. And don't forget Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson had one hell of a game at quarterback. And if it weren't for just an absolute collapse of a Ravens defense that I really don't trust, I think the Ravens come out with a win. Like if the Ravens had a better defense, shockingly enough, weird to say that, if the Ravens had a better defense, they would have won the game. But it is what it is. Tua putting up 6 touchdowns, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. There was so much good coming out of that game fantasy-wise. I want to start there. So, let's talk about the wide receivers first and foremost.
Sure.
Tyreek Hill going absolutely bonkers. But then, like I mentioned before, and he was one of my stardoms last week, Jalen Waddle ended up going nuts himself. So, Chris, go ahead and start. What are your takes on that game? Talk about Tyreek Hill. Because I know Tyreek Hill is going to be on your list here coming up soon. But let's talk about those wide receivers for the Dolphins. And then, honestly, go ahead. You start.
Finish your thought because I think you had something important. Where were you going with that?
It was going with the running backs, but I want to save the running backs for later. Okay. I want to save the running backs for later. So go ahead. Go ahead with the wide receivers.
I appreciate that. No, I think, as you said, there was fucking fantasy. It was a fantasy orgy, if you will, for that game. I mean, Waddle and Hill did something that's never been done in the NFL before with, two players with 10 catches, 150 yards, and a TUD. I mean, that says something. And in a winning effort, and that was Tua's coming out party. But Tyreek Hill showing why he's worth all that money. what do you have total? 11 catches, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think he was wide receiver 1 with 42 points on the day. That was just, not that it was a surprise. Like you said, he was your start last week, but the fact that he just continues to, it clearly doesn't matter who's throwing him the ball. You can knock Tua for what have you, but clearly he has got something going with Tyreek, Jalen. Mr. McDaniel has the boys, gunning over there in Miami. I think Tua was I think Tyreek was my guy for my biggest boomer, if you will, for week 3 or week 2. I was blown away by his production.
Yeah, he was actually the number 2. I mean, right underneath Stephon Diggs, because Stephon Diggs went nuts on Monday night. But you had the top, or 2 of the top 4 or 5, wide receivers for this week were Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, number 2 and number 4 respectively. Go ahead, Claudio. I know. What are your takes from this game? I know the Ravens had a lot of good points, still without J.K. Dobbins, but when you have Lamar and Mark Andrews, it's like, I mean,
and Bateman,
it makes you feel a little better, and Bateman as well. Bateman
came out hard. I mean, obviously I agree with what Jackal said about those receivers going off. I mean, I think I didn't look at the start percentage of Tua, but sadly, I think he was on a lot of people's benches. I don't think everybody was thinking he was going to do this. But I mean, you don't know. Maybe it was because they got down by so much, and so obviously they had to change their game style and their game plan. But we'll see what they do next week. Miami's got a tough matchup with Buffalo next week, so we'll see how real this Tua, Hill, Waddle trio is against Buffalo, because they've just been on fire. But that game was nuts, like a few other games this week. The Jets game was crazy.
Yeah, a lot of comebacks. A lot of comebacks.
Arizona, fucking people slapping Kyler Murray in the face on the sideline.
I thought he overreacted. I understand. Like, I would be offended in a way, like because the way it happened, I could see
it might have been accidental. I don't know.
That's what I thought, but I could see why Kyler Murray would be upset. You're in Vegas with Raiders fans. Like, I wouldn't put it past them. You know what I'm saying? Like, just a quick little slap to Kyler Murray just to say you did it. But,
but I like Zane. I was just going to say this. There's been a lot of injuries on the Ravens D. The cornerbacks have been getting suspect. They've been getting blown up so far past couple of weeks. So we'll see. I mean, that was obviously an exciting game and crazy amount of fantasy points. And I mean, didn't
you guys have Tua as a guy for your boomer for week 2? I mean, was there someone that just absolutely loved? Did either of you guys have him as a starter? Did you guys play him? I mean,
no,
I don't have any shares on the day, right behind Lamar Jackson,
number 2,
right?
Number 2, and he would be number 1 hadn't it been for 2 interceptions he threw earlier in the game. He had a like the first half of the Dolphins was just terrible, and then out of nowhere, I would be very weary of the Dolphins this week, and we'll get to that in a minute. Another game that was kind of like bonkers, like you had mentioned, was that Jets-Browns game. You had Nick Chubb. Flacco, first of all. You had Nick Chubb, 3 touchdowns, just doing what he does. I think he pretty much single-handedly smacked me in fantasy this past week.
I got Nick Chubb last night.
But then you had this emergence of the Jets wide receivers, right? You had Corey Davis coming out of nowhere. You have first of all, you have Corey Davis, then you have Garrett Wilson, and then you got this old man throwing to him, Joe Flacco, who in the first 2 games, man, like Joe's had over 300 yards first 2 games of the year. He's threw it over 40 times this past game. And I mean, I understandably in comeback fashion, but like the Jets, maybe they're finding some type of a rhythm. Maybe they found a matchup or I guess a leader in Joe Flacco. I would say you found a leader, somebody who could hold out to the fort, I guess, until you get Wilson back. But so far, I think the Jets are a little bit surprising, but I would say their wide receivers are the biggest threat, I would say, coming out of this week.
Yeah, they're surprising people. And I think to your point. Yeah.
No,
go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Claudio.
No, I was just going to add also Breece Hall. Breece Hall had a little mini coming out party. Yeah. He had a decent game, and looks like he's, he got a lion's share of the carries and stuff. So it looks like he's going to be the man over there.
And Salah's got something brewing over there. They're kind of fixing the line. They're doing what they can to really try to establish a good scheme there. And I just think that the Jets, you're seeing a changing of the guard with Buffalo last year taking over the AFC East. And then, and now New England, I mean, they had a win against, Pittsburgh. Nonetheless, I think that Miami, Buffalo, it's getting pretty interesting in that division. And I think, they talk about all the quarterbacks that went out west. I still think you're going to see all sorts of great competition, not NFL wise, just fantasy numbers being put up out of that, from the Jets. I don't know what Zach Wilson's going to do when he comes back, but if he plays better than Joe Flacco, that speaks well for the wide receivers that you're talking about, right? Ivan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would say that there may be a tick in production, or Wilson comes back and his knees are sore from bagging moms, and he just can't, he just doesn't perform. I don't know. It's interesting though. I can't believe we're talking about the Jets and fantasy relevancy, because it's something that just doesn't really happen often.
It blows your mind. Let's real quick before we go ahead and get into the meat of what we wanted to talk about today. I want to go ahead and mention the Colts Jaguars game. Yeah. What a disappointment that Colts team has been the first two games.
They're already talking about fire Frank Reich. They want him out.
Fire Frank Reich. Matt Ryan looking bad, and I thought Matt Ryan would be a godsend to that team.
I agree.
After having a Carson Wentz, after having like this quarterback, turnstile, year in and year out after Andrew Luck had left, I figured he'd be a good fit for them. He still might be. It's only 2 games in the year.
True.
Mm-hmm. Two games into the year. JT was not productive this week. Ooh. Not productive this week.
No, I mean, I don't think they're using him, enough as they should be, and they have in the past. Yeah, I mean, Matt Ryan just had a horrible game. I had him in one of my leagues, in a 2-quarterback league.
Yeah, you're telling me.
He was my second quarterback, and he definitely just wasn't seeing the field the right way. He was throwing horrible picks, and it was just a bad game for them. But like you said, it's week 2. Pittman wasn't there, so Pittman comes back. Maybe obviously they step it up a little bit.
That hurt them. You're right.
Yeah, but on the other end though, the Jaguars, man, listen. They got something going on over there. Christian Kirk, everybody was like, they paid him money. He's not going to do nothing. This kid balled out. And
I would do that trade in a heartbeat. Sorry, Claudio.
No, that's all right.
Jesus. I mean,
Dobbins
you could get Jalen Hurts.
I mean, yeah.
I think it's
he gets Jalen Hurts. Is that a serious question?
Is that a joke?
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, Hurts for Dobbins. I mean,
right now,
is that from Josh?
I would get off. Stop watching this show, Logan. And
if you find somebody to do that,
a 2-team league.
I mean, bring him on the show because I'd like to ask him some questions
and get me
or her or whatever. But yeah, and get us in that league next year. Go ahead, Claude. What's your thought? The Jaguars.
Oh no, I was just saying. I was very impressed with them. India's defense is no slouch, and they took it to him. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is seeing the field a lot better. His rookie season, and I think they got some stuff going on. Zay Jones, another guy, so and Evan Ingram too. So I think they're they got something going on over there, and that division's wide open.
Is Evan Ingram about to make an emergence, Jackal? Is he going to have to be have his career resurrected in Jacksonville?
He was there as the fucking he was the safety security blanket for Trevor Lawrence. He comes in and now he's doing exactly what he was supposed to do when they brought him in. I mean, I'm pretty surprised that they wrote him off with the Giants. He comes over to Jacksonville and he's putting up some numbers.
He wasn't half bad around the Giants before he got hurt.
Wasn't.
But he made some catches.
A lot of injuries.
He
had a lot of injuries.
In New England, we kind of we heard the hate for him so much because he just didn't live up to that. Like they thought he was going to be big time. Jeremy Shockey, not Jeremy Shockey-esque, but like they loved their tight ends here. Up here, the Giants fans, and they thought he was going to be the guy, and he just did not live up to the hype, and he would get killed every Monday morning quarterback was like, screw that dude. So now he goes to Jacksonville. He's out of the big market, less pressure probably, got a little bit more bread, and he's performing. And looks like he's got a better quarterback too. So here we go. I mean, he had what's his face? He had Eli, but I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is better than Eli Manning. I'm just saying right now compared to what he had in New York before he left.
Well, his ceiling could be higher, no doubt.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go get a little deeper. Let's talk injuries real quick. All right,
Yeah.
Injuries. I'll go ahead and kick it off. The biggest one, I think, Trey Lance for me. I would say Trey Lance, like that. I mean, it could have changed the trajectory of the 49er season for the better.
Yeah.
Just because he was not starting off the way you lose the first game. I know it's a monsoon, but you're coming in. You weren't. I mean, you started off 3 for 6. There was already questions about you. Then you hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say you hurt yourself. I think it could. I couldn't really tell how it ended up, but he ended up breaking his ankle. He had to get surgery.
Yeah.
In
Out for the
comes Jimmy.
season.
In comes Jimmy G. Out for the season. In comes Jimmy G. This is like probably I guess I think it might be the best thing for him. Familiar face, a guy that the locker room trusts, a guy that the coaching staff we know trusts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they were trying to find a reason to keep Jimmy G in that starting spot.
Yeah.
What does this do for the 49ers? You know,
I think actually they actually privately had a big sigh of relief that they didn't have to make that decision of.
Did you see him celebrate after they scored?
Sitting Lance. Yeah, I mean, listen, obviously they voted this dude captain.
Yeah.
And he was going to be on the bench. So the team obviously loves this dude. Not that they don't like Lance, but Lance didn't prove enough to him. This dude took him to a Super Bowl. This dude has won playoff games. So I was saying in the offseason and when all this stuff was going on, I couldn't understand why they were doing that. I thought Jimmy G's a very good quarterback in that system with all those weapons. So I think it's going to help them out. So all the fancy guys on that team, I think Jimmy G there is going to
Brandon Ayuk.
Ayuk, all those guys fantasy values.
Jeff Wilson probably benefits the most.
Do you think so?
And what I mean by that is, Lance likes to run, probably takes carries away from the running backs in that offense. And Wilson had a great day with Jimmy G at the quarterback. I think he had 80 something 18 rushes for 84 yards and 2 catches for 19 as I try to read those over my computer screen. But yeah, I think if you give him a couple more touches in that offense, and if he's putting up those types of yards per carry, you're gonna see an increase in Jeff Wilson fans because he's gonna be doing things for your fantasy team. To Claudio's point and to your point, Ivan, I agree. I think you're gonna see 2021 style fantasy points from Debo. And, hopefully Ayuk doesn't have that type of peaks and valley season as he had last year, but he came on strong towards the end. But I do agree with you guys. I think you're going to see fantasy production. You're not going to see a decrease in San Francisco. You're going to see at least where they're at now. But honestly, I agree. I think they're going to probably, get an uptick in production.
Yeah. And I agree. I think, like I said, I don't want to write off Trey Lance at all. But
for this year, you can, though.
For this year, For this year, obviously. But I always thought, Jimmy, I was like, why are they trying to get rid of a guy? One throw away, right? One throw away from actually winning a Super Bowl or making it very interesting at the end. A guy that got you to another matchup, another title game last season. It's weird. I just feel like Jimmy G is getting the short end of the stick in San Francisco. He's not going to be a great, fantasy wise, unless you're in like a 2-quarterback league.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go ahead and run, to pick up Jimmy G. But as far as, the play on the field, I think it was their best bet, to start him anyways and just leave Trey Lance for another season. But that's
fantasy wise, I think, especially when he gets Kittle back, I mean, you're going to have matchups where you will want to start Jimmy G, I think.
I agree.
Depending on, obviously, unless you have a
roster
quarterback.
6% of the
if
league,
you got a middle-of-the-road quarterback on your that you're starting, I think Jimmy G is definitely a guy that certain weeks you want to look at.
Hey, real quick, Zane, just so you know, TDP has a high ankle sprain, is going to be out for a while. So I still agree. He did cut into some carries, but at the same time, he's going to be out. And I think so. I stand by my statement that Jeff Wilson will definitely get an increase in carries with Jimmy G as quarterback. But I do hear you. I just didn't want to ignore that. So good point.
Yeah. How about this? You want to answer that?
Yeah, man. So, hey, coming off of week 1 where he averaged 1.6 carries and the other running back does a little better regardless of who says what about. And I didn't like the matchup. So I made a statement about sitting Monty. Didn't go over all that well. You can cut it all up and make it sound how you want to make it sound. But those words came out of my mouth. And, I did sit him in my team, in my game, in my lineup, and I won. Nonetheless,
Who would have known that last week 2 you could have sat Derrick Henry and started David Montgomery?
Yeah.
That's wild.
That's what fantasy is all about. I mean, listen, we can look at stats and we're obviously not experts, but even the experts that get paid a lot of money to do that are like weathermen. All right, they look at the data, they look at the stats, and they make predictions. And sometimes it don't fucking rain. Sometimes you get 2 inches and not fucking 12. I mean, so it's just part of the thing. But
I like that.
Another
you like that, okay?
Yeah, another injury in this week.
Ivan's just
no, it's good. It's good. Another injury in this past weekend was James Conner for the Arizona Cardinals, which shakes things up. He was coming from Pittsburgh. I thought he found himself in Arizona last season. I thought they really hit a groove once they started feeding him the rock. Losing him, how does that affect Kyler Murray? Kyler Murray looked awesome coming back against the Raiders this past weekend, but how does the loss of James Conner affect the Cardinals, and what do we look forward to as far as Cardinals running backs on the waiver wire?
I mean, I think Darrell Williams is probably the guy you want to pick up. Yeah. I mean, he had 8 goal line snaps in that game after Conner went down, so that's a lot of touches at the goal line. I think he's, looks like he might get the share, the snap, more snaps in his favor. So, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I would pick him up if I was going to pick anybody up, but I wouldn't put a lot of stock in whoever you pick up.
What about Benjamin? I mean, he had 8 carries for 59 yards and a touchdown. Or no, that was Williams. You're right. So he had 8 for 31, 3 catches for 20. He's probably rostered in about the same amount of leagues. You could probably get both of those guys, but I think you're right, though, Claudio. I think Darrell Williams is going to be getting more of the carries now than Benjamin. Yeah,
but they're both very unknown. It's tough to really, So I mean, obviously, you pick them up if you want to pick them up. You got a bench spot, but I'm not too excited about either of them.
Yeah, for me, it's a gamble. Definitely with Henderson, right? Or not Henderson. My God, I'm blanking on the name.
James Conner?
No,
Benjamin?
Williams.
There we go.
I was thinking Darrell Henderson for some reason. No, Darrell Williams. With Darrell Williams, I would say, with the carries around the goal line, he'd be your best bet. I would stay away from me personally. I'm staying away from him. But if you're gonna go ahead and take a chance, I would go with Williams definitely.
Okay.
Going over to the Denver Broncos, they lost Jerry Jeudy a little. They lost him. He didn't return during this past weekend's game against the Texans after the first quarter. How does that? I know we're going to talk about. I know we're going to talk about Russ later. Jerry Jeudy, now that we know that the Broncos are struggling, you lost to the Texans, you lost to the Seahawks. Losing Jerry Jeudy does not help your quarterback. It does not help your team. And I think they just lost their best weapon, point blank. I really do. The running backs I want to give a shot, but I don't think any of them are going to really, none of them are Adrian Peterson. You know what I mean? They're not going to go ahead and rush for 2,000 yards, this year. But, looking at how bad the Broncos have been, losing Jerry Jeudy and losing him in fantasy, does it really hurt if you lost him in fantasy? These past couple weeks, I don't know. I don't think it does. But
right? As far
as the season, I think it might hurt some fans unless the Broncos end up just sucking and don't figure it out, and it really doesn't matter. But Jerry Jeudy is probably the biggest loss to the Denver Broncos.
I mean, he had that one catch that put up his stats. Really that one long touchdown. So I don't know if it's really he was going to be consistently. I think Sutton would be more the guy that you got to worry about losing. But I think I think that whole offense is. I mean, Javonte Williams, I think, is definitely obviously a guy you want to still start. The guy's going to get a lot of touches, but Russell Wilson just not. I mean, I have him in a couple leagues, and he's just not. I don't know if it's a play calling. I don't know what the deal is, but he's obviously a huge bust so far.
Yeah. I think Courtland Sutton, though, he has 4 red zone attempts with Wilson. Granted, he's 0 for 4 this year, but through 2 weeks, 4 tries. Hopefully, he cashes in on those targets, and then that gives him some value. He had a 39% target share also, which is extremely nice to hear if you're a Courtland Sutton fan. So the one dude that's probably happy about Jerry Jeudy being hurt is probably Courtland Sutton, but out and their fantasy owners. Actually, he's probably not happy at all. But his fantasy.
You got
owners are probably
Hamler too.
happy,
Hamler, if he comes back, he was hurt.
Because he's hurt, right? Yeah.
But if he's coming back,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get into what we wanted to talk about. I know, Jackal, I'm gonna let you go ahead and lead this. The question was, first round running backs versus first round wide receivers. A lot of the running backs to start the season, at least the first 2 weeks into the season, haven't really been hitting. A lot of the first rounders haven't really been doing much. You had a 25-yard gain from Derrick Henry. You had that, was it 33 yards, I believe, Jonathan Taylor had against the Jaguars. These top running backs aren't really, and then Najee Harris kind of got bottled up. It hasn't really been a great couple of weeks for Najee Harris either. So these top running backs have been struggling so far during the season. Jacko brought it up. Is it worth it to take a running back in the first round over a wide receiver? Or should we see more wide receivers taken in the first round? Jacko, go ahead.
I thought it was really interesting as we were looking at kind of the trends and breaking down some of the fantasy stuff, and there was already been conversations and chatter about wide receivers definitely just flooding the first round and actually just kind of flooding just being more valuable. And we talked about it, not just, and this is a little off fantasy topic, but just more NFL related. These guys are more plug and play ready, I think, from the wide receiver standpoint, coming from those pro schemes in college and going to these offenses that, they play to their strengths, and, teams now know what they need and they can kind of pick the guys they need for their system. Also, the guys are super fucking talented. And I think that just creates a bigger ratio of top wide receivers versus top running backs. You still have the outliers in terms of running backs that go in the first round. How many were taken in the first round this year? Was Breece Hall the only one? I'm trying to remember. But to the point of, and how many wide receivers were taken in the first round?
I don't think Breece Hall was in the first round.
No, not in my draft, but
I mean, I'm talking in general, just in terms of the value for a wide receiver to an NFL team compared.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Receiver, I mean, you look at them right now. Olave's starting to come up. Dotson,
Garrett Wilson had that game-winning touchdown.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are really, like you said, plug and play. They're getting right in and they're making impacts.
Well, that's because a lot of well, the end of NFL has changed so damn much. It's a wide receiver. It's a wide receiver league. It's a passing league, no doubt. And the more guys you have, you should be looking at. It shouldn't be like a number one guy that you should be looking at as a threat. You should look at a whole stable of wide receivers as a threat. They should all have a unique skill. They should all be able to do something that. And honestly, you're seeing more and more of them. Like I said, you see a Jalen Waddle with a Tyreek Hill. You're seeing them draft 2 number one. Make sure you draft 2 number one receivers. So it's not a 1 and 2. It's 1 and 1. Definitely with some of these teams that are working.
Well, that's why I think there is more value with running backs, because there's not as many. So there's obviously a lot of receivers out there that you can pick up. So with running backs, I mean, you have a lot of teams that are doing the two running backs thing. Even shares. But not a lot of them are. Both of them are putting up like Cleveland, like with Chubb and Hunt. There's not a lot of teams doing that, so you're limited on your running backs. But I agree. I mean, I was just looking at the stats real quick right here. Nick Chubb is a leader after 2 weeks, right? 48.6 or whatever in our league, in the TTNL league. There's 6 receivers that are ahead. I was just
going to say,
6 receivers that have more points than the number one running back. Now, of course, it matters on PPR and this and that, so that adds more points to the receivers. But a lot of people play in PPR, and so I agree. I think it's definitely seeing the shift. I mean, they're doing it in the NFL. It's a passing league. These teams are passing the ball more than ever, and it just gets more and more every year. It seems like.
And I agree with Logan. Sorry, Jack. I agree with Logan. That those first 4 running backs, it's so tough because you're we're so limited. Let me go ahead and grab them. I need to have it. I need to have it. But then you find so much value in the later rounds. You get a rookie running back that has fresh legs that, takes off on another team. An injury happens that leaves the door open for, another. I feel like Jackal is onto something, like Jackal and Logan. You're right. Like, you shouldn't touch after the first four. It's like you shouldn't touch anybody to like the third or fourth round. But as far as production, we see how little they produce those top running backs to start the season. If this continues, and I know, like I said, I know it's only 2 weeks in, but if this continues, it'll only feed Jackal's point. Like, is it like, I think it's time to start looking at more wide receivers in the first round and running backs a little later, because you have a lot of them. Like, who took a shot at a Kenneth Gainwell? You know what I mean? Like, who took a shot at him with a higher pick thinking he's going to do something? He hasn't been producing. Like, even Miles Sanders hasn't been producing. Like, there's guys out there, there's running backs out there, even Ezekiel Elliott. Like, you might as well have drafted Tony Pollard. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a crapshoot to me now at running back.
And it's just crazy. Like Christian McCaffrey, I mean, he did have double-digit numbers, but like McCaffrey, first, second pick. Jonathan Taylor, first, second pick. The guy Saquon Barkley was a third-round pick for a lot of people this year, and he's probably out producing his ADP more than any running back. I'm trying to think.
Oh, he's number 2 right now.
Yeah, and he was and so I think, to your point, Ivan, of drafting, if you miss some of those top running backs, you can get a guy like, I'm going to say it, David Montgomery much later in a draft, because it's just the way it all kind of crumbles, and I think there's so much more value in those wide receivers, like Amon St. Brown. He's just a guy that I know, I'm not sure if we're going to talk about, but I see him going from a sleeper, an unknown. He finished great. I mean, the guy he's a monster. And what is it? 8 straight games or whatever the fucking numbers are. I don't remember off the top of my head.
It also depends on your roster, right? Yeah. So I mean, there's rosters that I've been in where you start 3 receivers and you have a flex, so you can have 4, receivers. So that would be, if that's how your roster is, I would suggest you go heavy on the receivers. And if you could play 4 receivers that are studs, they're going to put up more points on average than, being able to start 3 running backs.
I was in a dynasty league. I am in a dynasty league, and I had Kamara was my best running back, and then I have like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I have Helaire. I have Kareem Hunt, and just a bunch of rookies. And I traded Kamara for Debo Samuel and some draft picks because this dude needed run. I was like, I'm going to go with the theory of I have a great wide receiving core. You can play 3 with a double flex spot. So I could play 5 wide receivers, and I do almost every lineup because I have such a great, stable of wide receivers. Because I kind of went away from the trend of trying to load up on running backs because I saw the age of the guys I had, and I was like, you know what, let's try it out and see how it goes. And so far, so good. I'm 2-0 in this league right now. And I think I have enough young running backs that if I hit on like a Eno Benjamin or I took the dude from the Chiefs, Panchero, I think that's something, it's just something to think about. And I thought it would make for a good little conversation about seeing that shift from that just dominant top heavy running backs. You might now see wide receivers going, 2, 3, 4, and a run on wide receivers early because people want to get those points. And it's just pretty crazy to see now and how fantasy's kind of shifting.
Yeah, well, definitely with the schemes, college schemes coming to the NFL. Well, they're here, and they've been established for a while now. Yeah. Like, you got these aired out concepts that are just they're here to stay. Like, there's no beating around the bush. I wouldn't be surprised if running backs continue. Like, of course, you're going to go after like Logan said, like a set maybe 4 or 5.
Yep.
Like there's a top 4 or 5.
You have a top 4 pick, like, right?
Yeah. Okay. Boom. You're going to probably end up taking them. But after that, there's so many playmaking wide receivers in the league and coming into the league. Mm-hmm. I just see it flooding, flooding the drafts. Like you're going to want to take a lot of these guys because, like I said before, a lot of these teams are going to start drafting more than just one named receiver. Like they're going to go after maybe 2 number 1 guys, not in the same draft, but draft the top guy and maybe go after another guy later or get a guy in free agency. They're going to try to put big time playmakers at these wide receiver spots. They're not necessarily worried about the running back. Like the great debate on this network, Herbert and Montgomery, right? If you look at the trends of the league, regardless of how we all feel, that's where they're going. They're going to multiple running backs, use them, and then draft some more.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Draft some more in the later rounds when you have that draft capital at the bottom half of the draft. Like draft the running back then and get value out of them. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, look in just the NFL, what they're doing. The big money is going to receivers, right? I mean, you get AJ Brown, Diggs,
all of it,
Tariq Hill, and look at what that's doing for those quarterbacks. Hurts gets AJ Brown. Allen has Diggs. The best teams in the league and the best offenses have those big time receivers, and the money is not going to go to because they paid them. So that just speaks to the trend of receivers are going to be more important on teams and in offenses.
I mean, look at Miami, Claudio, to exactly what you're saying. They felt they were a guy away, right? And they were like, okay, so really what's it going to take? I guess maybe a couple draft picks, but a shit ton of money. Ross was like, okay. And they bring him in and look at the change in their offense with Tyreek Hill, and look at what it's doing for Waddle's production. I mean, and Chase Edmonds isn't necessarily
Waddle was producing even before him, though.
No, but my point is, go ahead.
I forget who he's behind. I think Odell in his
as
first
rookie,
so many starts.
Yeah.
Only Odell has more catches than Waddle, so Waddle was doing it, but it just added to obviously, They
felt they were that speedster away from like being like a legit contender, and they what did they do? They went out and got one, and they got probably the freaking fastest dude the dude's unbelievable.
They got the most dangerous guy in space, and I think they have another dangerous guy in space in Jalen Waddle too. Not to mention, was it Glasecki?
Gesicki,
they just finally started using him a little bit.
Yeah,
he can't dance, but
there's
he can catch.
There's weapons all over that team. But like I said, what do you fear? You fear Waddle and you fear Hill.
Yeah.
It's going to be the trend. It's going to be the norm. If it's not here already. What is this? Dak just didn't come out firing. Yeah, I think he was answering Logan's comment about Cooper and Lamb. That's exactly what they wanted. It just didn't work out in Big D. Let's go ahead and get into our studs and duds, and then we'll go into our start and sit-ems, and then we'll get into the waiver. Yeah. Where do you want to?
I feel like we kind of got into some of our studs and duds. We talked about some studs. Is there some guys? Claudio, is there? Yeah. I think there's some. I know.
We talked about Chubb. Yeah. We talked about St. Brown. Drake London.
Yeah, good call on that, Claudio.
Yeah,
talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, the dude had 24 fantasy points. And it says it right there, 8 receptions, 86 yards, a touchdown. He had 48% of the target share. So Pitts, obviously, if you have Pitts in fantasy, you're in the pits because the dude is not living up to the hype. I don't think you jump ship on Pitts right now. I think you stick with him. He's still uber talented. I think whatever. But yeah, Drake London looks like he's the guy over there, and he's going to get a lot of play over there. It's a good, so he was to me, obviously there's a lot of studs this week, the big names. So I just thought, talk about a couple guys that, just I think are going to just be studs, and maybe we're stud this week and are going to maybe be studs in the future too. Okay. Amon-Ra St. Brown, we talked about him before. You said the numbers are, he's got 20 plus points in the 7 of the last 8 games.
That's
20
amazing.
Points. Yeah. He's up there with Cooper Kupp. Like when you
does
look
he
at the
become
last
a top?
games.
Is he? Does he
I think
the first round next year? Does he creep into the first round?
I do. I think. First
amazing.
Round. I think he'll be definitely one of the top receivers.
Okay.
If he's gonna consistently go in the first round, I don't know, but I think he'll definitely be first, second round. Yeah, I know, Cool Kennedy. We'll get to. We're doing studs. Mooney's not a stud. We're gonna do duds.
He was definitely a dud.
Jackal.
So I had a couple stuff. I talked about Tyreek Hill, right? Jalen Hurts, it's right there. I just think it's where we see him. We're looking at a guy that could ultimately turn into a QB3. for fantasy purposes. He was right. He was knocking on the doorstep last year. He showed bringing in another weapon. Speaking of weapons, like we did with Miami, bringing in AJ Brown. I think, that they got a double-headed monster with Gainwell and Miles Sanders. Gainwell, if he caught that ball, it bounced off his hands, and it cost Hurts an interception. But I mean, I was blown away. I didn't think Hurts was going to continue to. I thought maybe they'd figure him out a little bit, but Nick Sirianni, he's got some stuff brewing over there. 26 for 31, 333 yards. One tud through the air for 6 points, depending on your league. One interception and 57 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. We talked about Tyreek Hill already, and Mark Andrews just proving again, just that valuable tight end for Baltimore. I know there's a lot of Isaiah Likely fans there who's getting some love in the fantasy world, but Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews have a match made in heaven, just like cheese and wine. Who fucking knows? But I
thought you were going with Kelsey and Mahomes.
I was going to say I almost
works.
said Jimmy G and George Kittle, but it was too early.
Yeah.
But I just thought Mark Andrews is another reason why he's always one of the top 3 tight ends in fantasy. Proving it again this year, was a stud for me and a couple of my rosters. So those are just a couple of my guys on my stud list as we do it here.
Zane, defenses are double covering Pitts. Yeah, but they also double cover Kelsey. They also double cover Waller. They also double cover. So,
guys get open.
If you're that guy, you're going to be the guy no matter what. And Pitts has the physical ability. He has everything. So, let me wait and see. But
let me push back on that a little bit. When you have a top defense, they're keying in on a Kyle Pitts because he's their number one target. Like he's their. Yeah. I know it's his second year, but he's their number one target. He's in there to be their number one target. Kelsey is the number one target of the Chiefs. If you're getting targeted and you're getting doubled and they're planning around you, it is kind of tough. Like you look at Kelsey this week, and he's going to be one of my my duds actually, which is good. But Kelsey struggled this week. If they're targeting these tight ends and they're doubling these tight ends underneath, it's going to be hard for them to get open. I think that it's going to be a week to week. I think it's going to be a week to week basis, but it depends on the defense, right? It depends on the defense, and I don't want to make excuses.
Seattle.
Right. I don't want to make excuses. Well, that Seattle defense isn't that bad. Like it's not horrible, but it's at like their offense can't do anything for them. Like you saw that with the night. Like you ain't going to do nothing with a good defense if you're the Seattle offense. But anyway, I digress. Let me go into my studs.
Yeah.
Honestly, I got 2. Just 2. Lamar Jackson, he went off, and bringing it back to that Ravens Dolphins game, the quarterbacks just went off. To me, it was impressive to see Tua on a comeback after all the questions of his, mental fortitude. Is he able to go ahead and really command a team and be a leader of a football team in the NFL? I think he's beginning to answer these questions. I think Mike McDaniel has been a godsend to him. I feel like he's been more relaxed, Tua being. And then Lamar Jackson, don't call him a running back, even though he had 9 rushes for 119 yards. He also threw for 318 yards and 3 touchdowns while completing 21 of 29 passing. I'm not going to do the math. And I'm no mathematician, but that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Those are pretty good numbers for a Lamar Jackson. So my 2 studs coming out of that one game were Lamar and Tua. It was an impressive game.
Dude, that clip of him running up the middle on that play and just hitting R1 is it's amazing. Just seeing how fast he is. And he put on almost 20 pounds of muscle in the offseason, and he gets out like that. I mean, that motherfucker can move. He's a dog, but
no doubt, man. And it blew me away watching that comeback. I was just like, are they really going to do this? And then you just see play after play after play. Tua was a different animal in that second. You could give it up to the coaching adjustments or whatever, but I think the players made plays, and that was the biggest difference in that game for the Dolphins. But let's go ahead to duds. I know I brought up the graphics, and we've seen some of them. Claudio, your duds for the week.
Yeah, bring it up. Listen, Mooney is my man. We all know Mooney's my man. He's still my man, right? And I don't put as much of him being a dud on him. I just think, obviously, we all know as Bear fans, the play call in Justin Fields is not seeing stuff right and not seeing open guys because he's getting separation. I forget the stat that they put out, next gen stats, but Mooney's getting separation from the defenders. So, but fantasy wise, obviously, if you got him in your lineup or you got him on your team, you can't be starting him. You just can't.
Stinks.
Yeah, I mean, you can't right now until they start clicking. You can't. Derrick Henry obviously goes without saying. I mean, he was just bottled up, stopped, and that was shocking. You know, definitely shocking. I bet that he would get over 85 yards, and
did you?
And I lost that bet. Yeah, I lost that bet. I was like, oh shit! By the fucking second quarter, I'm like, it's not looking good. So yeah, I mean, you know, he was a dud this week, but again, we're not saying duds as in they're going to be duds for the whole season.
He's a fantasy dud.
The fantasy dud. He'll
it's a
probably
weekly
go
thing.
off next week and have
Hopefully.
fucking 200
We hope.
yards.
I mean, he was
Hopefully
on
it's
the
a
field,
weekly thing.
for 94% of their offensive plays, and he had 18% of the target shares. He got 2 passes thrown to him, and he still had 18%, almost 20%. You know,
I think about Mooney.
Yeah, it just to
Mooney,
piggyback your point. You know,
Yeah.
like he's on the field, and if he's getting open and Fields is missing him, then that's on the quarterback and not on Mooney.
He was only
you
thrown
know?
28 attempts. I mean, 28 attempts is like
Yeah.
the last time that happened was like in the 70s or some shit.
And
I mean, so like it's just, you know, he's obviously another dud that we could talk about.
favorable
Fields.
matchup though, Claudio, just to help you with Mooney, just to support you thinking he's going to come back week 3. I mean, I don't feel like starting him because we need to see, but like, you know, a little bit of a favorable matchup against Houston. You'd think maybe a little not as strong of a defense, and maybe he would actually have an opportunity to do something over there. I don't know. I just
I just think I of course agree. I hope we go off and we get things going, but obviously for a fantasy wise, I don't think unless you're really weak at receiver, I think you got to look at somewhere else than Mooney.
He ran 16 routes last night or Sunday night is what I'm reading here, you know. And
so and Matt
2
Ryan
targets.
Matt Ryan we talked about too before.
Yep.
I mean, again, he just had a horrible game. 3 interceptions, sacked 5 times. And it was just that whole offense is just in shambles with everything going on. So definitely another guy you might want to hold on your bench for a little bit.
Yeah, it hurt, man. JT not getting the ball because they had to let Matt Ryan throw it. And it is just like, oh, Jesus. You know, why don't you just give JT the ball? Let him see if he can fucking get you back in the game, whatever, you know? I mean, fucking just do a bunch of screens. And Christ.
I agree. Well, anyway, let's go to Jackal. Jackal, you got your studs and your duds for the week.
Yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson, you know, Mr. Unlimited, you know, Mr. Let's Ride. Yeah, you fucking are riding everyone's fantasy bench right now. You stink, dude. You know, 14 for 31 with 219 yards, 1 touchdown. All the fucking hype. He had that interception too. Sorry, I didn't mean to omit that. But yeah, and he's been getting sacked. I mean, I'm not saying their line is, you know, the top caliber, but you know, at the same time they did invest there. Were they doing just as good with Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Lock? Almost similar results are happening. You know, I guess Wilson can turn it around, but he's been fucking piss poor, man. He
doesn't care though. God is good, and God is in his life, and that's all he cares about. Every time he's asked a question that he has to, you know, a tough question, it's always like, yeah, but you know, God is good,
and he's got the Niners coming to town. You know, so it's like, well. Good luck in week 3. You know, I got a win last week, but you didn't play well. You know, managed, I guess, just enough to get the dub. But, you know, that's my dud there. And my other guy that I thought was a bum was Chase Edmonds. You know, just 6 in a game where points were all over the place. Granted, they did have to throw, but in Miami, but he had 5.1 fantasy points. Just nothing to write home about when you see a game with that score and you're like, oh man, you know, you get back from whatever you're doing Sunday, you look at your fantasy lineup and you're like, shit, 5 points in a game that scored fucking 70 points. I mean, so I just think, you know, I just expected more. So he was a dud for me. And then my last guy was Juju Smith-Schuster. Very similar kind of theory is high scoring offense, put up a ton of points, and you end up with 3 catches and 10 yards. Yeah, pretty quiet. They put him on the field more maybe as a decoy. He was out there for 74% of the snaps and didn't really look his way too often. So I just look at those 3 dudes as my duds for week 2.
Well, I mean, I think Mahomes said it too, that each week is going to be different guys. Yeah, they're going to just spread the ball around, you know. So obviously Kelsey's the mainstay, but yeah, it's going to be tough to really depend on any of those receivers week by week.
Yeah, those are my
I agree.
busts.
I agree.
Busts.
All right, yeah, and Russell Wilson, just the biggest one. The biggest disappointment out of all of those guys. Like, just I don't want to say shit talking, but just the whole let's ride thing, the divorce from Seattle, just not a good way to start, Russ. But anyway, my duds for the week.
Yeah, who you got?
Travis Kelce is one of them,
Okay.
and Jonathan Taylor. Those are my two biggest ones. Jonathan Taylor, 9 rushes for 54 yards. Didn't do it. I mean, the Colts as a team didn't do jack shit against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Credit the Jaguars defense. Someone in the chat said the Jaguars defense might be, but I think it might have been Logan. The Jaguars defense might be a force to be reckoned with this season. I agree. And Travis Kelce, 5 catches, 51 yards. I know they did win the game. But that's not good for fantasy owners. Like that, fantasy owners are not happy. Whenever the Chiefs have a game like they did, well, they put up some points, but whenever the Chiefs are winning, you expect Travis Kelce to have at least a touchdown, and 50-something yards or 80-something yards and 2 touchdowns. You're expecting Travis Kelce to have a big week. This week was not that. I guess you could credit the Chargers defense for that. But, yeah, those are my duds.
Okay.
Quick and easy.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah, so we
Let's
want to
go.
move on.
Yeah, we're going to
We'll
go.
move on to starts and sits, or
Yeah, what do you guys want to do next? Waiver wire starts and sits.
Who wants to go for what? Who wants to go first with the? Well, where do we want to go? You want to go waiver wire? Or you want to go starts and sits?
Well, go waiver wire because some of those might be starts. So
there you go. Okay.
All right, Claude, kick it off.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about him before. I mean, Garrett Wilson is obviously, I think, a guy you want to start. The dude had 14 targets with 61% snaps. I mean, that is a lot of targets on only 61% of snaps. So I think Flacco's just going to keep looking at him, and he's going to be a guy that you're going to want in your lineup, next week and probably coming up. So I think also on the waiver wire, like I said before, Darrell Williams from Arizona, but also Rondelle Moore. I think Rondelle Moore is a guy you might want to pick up on Arizona. I think he's a guy that's going to come in and be like Christian Kirk was, that type of receiver. So that's the guy you might want to look at if you're looking for a receiver.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. Yep.
Is it Jackal?
I got a couple, man. I mean, you talk about a guy like Evan Ingram, right? Is he on your list? I think that Evan Ingram rostered in 16% of the leagues is a guy that is showing that, I talked about him being the security blanket for Trevor Lawrence. He only had 46 yards, but he had 8 targets and 7 receptions this past week. If he gets one of those in the end zone, that's a nice little number for you on a guy that you're going to grab for probably $0 or a couple of bucks at this point. We lost Ivan here. He went dark on us.
Look, he went
uh-oh.
About as many, yes, about as dark as the Bears' offense was.
Oh my goodness!
Go ahead.
So a guy that we talked about earlier, Trey Lance being hurt. I think there's some quarterbacks that are out there that you still may be able to grab. It's crazy to say that on the sleeper app, Tua is only rostered in 64% of the leagues. So he's a guy that you may be able to dump a bunch of money into Fab, or if you're the old.
Well, that's a good thing that you brought up. So,
Yeah.
so obviously, if he's out there, people are going to be gobbling him up.
Okay.
How much percentage of their Fab should you think they should be using on Tua?
I'll use myself as an example. I'm out Dak and Trey in that one league I was telling you about, and Tua, I have to double check. I think he's actually available. No, he's not. No, I take that back. Different league. But there's 2 other guys I'm going at that I need to actually overpay. And so to your point, I would probably overpay for Tua in that scenario.
So say you got $100.
If I'm a quarterback away,
100. Yeah.
I'm going to try to, I'm looking at 30-40%. I'll put a $30-$40. I mean, if I feel I'm that strong, I might even do 50. I mean, honestly, because if you believe in your team and that's what you think you need, that's not a bad guy to get your hands on right now. I mean, you might even want to go more than that. I mean, hey, can't take it home with you, So what about you? How much would you spend on a guy like Tua if he was available?
Again, it depends on obviously the situation. Depends on, not to bring it up again, 6 touchdown passes to 6 point to 4 point touchdowns. I think you would spend more if you're in a league that is given 6 points. But I would say around the same thing. I think Tua, obviously with those weapons, is going to be a guy that's going to go off, not every week, obviously, but a good amount of weeks. So it's a guy that you probably want a team. So around 30%, 25, 30%, if you need a guy, obviously.
Okay. All right. One other guy that I think that is probably out there that we're talking about for trying to replace an injured quarterback, whether you had Dak or, as we talked about with what's his face, Trey Lance, is shoot, I just lost him. Where'd he go? Oh no, that's bad. No, I'm sorry. It's Jared Goff. There we go. 22% rostered. Detroit is clicking. Their offense looks like they actually, Hard Knocks. I don't know what it did to them. Nonetheless, they're actually producing. He's got Minnesota, Seattle, and New England coming up, and I think he's not going to cost you a lot of money on a budget. He's kind of like a combination of Joe Flacco, and it's just all the good right now that's happening in Detroit is just kind of crazy to think about because their offense looks really good. And I think that's part of the fact that Jared Goff is actually playing with some confidence. I think Dan Motor City Campbell over there has the boys, he has them running. He's got DeAndre Swift helping him out as a PPR machine. I think Goff is a guy that you could probably look to go and grab in replace of Trey Lance if you're desperate for a quarterback. Nice. So those are my little couple waiver wire pickups there. Ivan, who do you got?
I was going to go with another Jet, Corey Davis. Corey Davis, he's being targeted. Like I said, I don't know if it's an anomaly or what the hell's going on with the Jets, but Joe Flacco's hitting his receivers. He's using everybody. I think he hit 8 or 9 receivers in the first game. I didn't look at the stats to see how many he hit in this past game. Let me go ahead and do that right now. But I would say, I didn't want to go ahead and say Jets wide receivers because I saw, Claudio had Garrett Wilson. But, yeah, I would go and take a shot at a Corey Davis. I would take a shot at Garrett Wilson, just any one of those 2 Jets receivers because it seems like Joe Flacco really likes to throw the ball to them.
Yeah, well, and they'll be down probably a lot of games too, obviously.
Yeah.
So
right.
Pass a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my my waiver wire. Let's go get into starts and sits. Jackal, your starts and sits this week.
Or I like to call it hit it or quit it.
Or do you want to just do starts first and then we'll just wrap around again with the sits?
Claudio, go. Why don't you kick it off with the starts? Why don't you start it off here?
Go ahead.
All right. Well, we talked about Garrett Wilson. I said that with the waiver segment. Definitely start him. I think if you got him. Zach Ertz. I think Zach Ertz. If you need a tight end, listen. Tight ends are very hard to come by right now. There's not a lot of top tight ends to be playing. Komet, obviously, this guy asked a question. Both Komet and Mooney bench. Yes, yeah, definitely. But I think with Ertz, he's actually the first in tight end usage in the whole league, and he's running routes 93% of the time that Kyler Murray is dropping back. So that means he's out there. He's ready to get passes thrown to him. So I would start him if you got him. And then Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is also a guy this week against Pitt who has been very very weak against the run. And short week coming up on Thursday night. He's getting a lot of targets. He's getting a lot of snap percentages, like 46%. So he's in there a lot. And Pittsburgh's been giving up 25 points to running back so far this year. So that all bodes well for the number to go up for Kareem Hunt this week.
Average 102 yards and 58 yards receiving for running backs. Pittsburgh gives up on defense. So that bodes pretty well, Claudio. That's a good choice, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. That's it for my starts.
All right. I got a guy for you, starting Curtis Samuel with our boys over the Commanders. He's jumped freaking off the
Yeah.
charts. Kind of, you talked
He was
about
my
him last
waiver
week,
wire
right?
pick last week.
Yeah, exactly. And if you didn't go there, you need to get him now.
Oh yeah,
you know,
if he's still there, you definitely got to get him. He's the man over there.
He jumped up to 66% from our show last week to this week. You know, he's rostered. And so there are still some leagues that he's out there. But he's only started in less than 30% of the leagues, you know? So, hey, get him in your fucking starting lineups, you know? But on Sunday, he was second in points per game with 21 points yesterday. He had 0 targets. His 0 targets, the 11th highest number in the league. And only 2 receivers have touched the ball in the run game, and that'd be Deebo Samuel and Chase Claypool. So meaning he's been getting his hands on the ball without necessarily being targeted. And the Commanders have really committed to that. And I think they're just trying to show they've done it the first 2 weeks, and I think they're going to continue to do that. And so for him to actually have usage without actually catching it as a wide receiver, it's just gravy to
You're saying he had 0 targets last week?
Meaning, yeah, no. What I'm trying to say is after Sunday, Samuel sits second in fantasy points per game with 21. He had 0 target. His 0 targets are the 11th highest number in the league.
0 targets? Are you?
Must
That
be a
came out
typo.
wrong.
Must
It's
be a
definitely
typo.
a typo.
He's
Oh
got
my God,
20
that sounds
targets.
awful.
20
He got
targets.
20 targets total.
That's where I'm wrong.
So you're
'cause
missing
it just
a 2.
says 0. It just says 0 on my
says-
screen.
we should-
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Okay. So that's
But
good
a little
thing,
light
dude.
bulb doesn't go
And then
off.
the next thing
Be like,
says,
wait, 0 targets is not
the next
good.
thing says he's averaging 10 touches a game. So to that point, you know, I'm going to circle back and just say he's got 20 targets on the season, 11th highest in the league. And so he's if they get him 10 touches a game, that's the guy that I'm trying to start for me right now. And he's a guy you still may be able to get as a waiver wire. So just
Yeah,
high
he's a really-
value.
Yeah.
What do you have? 13 receptions and 144 yards and 2 touchdowns on the year. So I mean, the guy is he's starting off pretty well. I like what we're doing here with Mr. Samuel, and I was really surprised that I scooped him up on the waiver wire last week because of you. So thank you, Claudio. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
And I completely fucked that up. So that was wonderful.
It was
But
gold.
Waiver
We'll
wire.
clip it.
Honestly, I know we didn't get to waiver wire. Has been crazy in my league. Like there's just been a nonstop movement going. I don't know if it's the same in yours, but it's been crazy in mine.
Yeah.
My starts for this week. I'm gonna go ahead and say Deandre Swift against the Minnesota Vikings. The reason being is the Vikings have given up over 200 yards, 274 yards to be exact, 3 touchdowns on 5.3 yards a carry. That's no good through 2 games, in my opinion. So I would go ahead and start Deandre Swift. He had a good game last week in a win against the Commanders. I think he's starting to feel it, starting to get lathered up. That Detroit team 1-1, but I feel like they're just starting to find their grooves. They're starting to find out their identity, and I think their identity is going to be DeAndre Swift. Use him, use that. I mean, they have a good running back, room in general, but DeAndre Swift, no doubt. The Vikings struggling to stop the run. I'm going to go with Swift this week, and then the other guy, Derek Carr, against the Titans. I think they're just going to have a bounce back game. The Titans aren't good. The Titans defense is not good. You saw it this past Monday against the Bills. You saw it, week 1 even against the Giants, and they lost that game by 1 point. But the Giants were able to run all over them. They were able to pass, when they needed to. And then you just saw a better team on Monday just beat the crap out of them. They're struggling with younger cornerbacks, younger DBs. So I would look for a Devontae Adams and a Derek Carr to go off. I would start Derek Carr going into this week.
Like that. Yeah.
Definitely
agree.
Sits, your sit-ems?
Sit-ems. I'll start. I mean, listen, Curtis Samuel will probably have some stats, but I don't think Carson Wentz is a guy this week you want to start going against the Eagles. I think the Eagles defense, I mean, look what they did, Monday night against the Vikings and just shut some of those guys down, shut that, Kirk Cousins was throwing picks, this and that. So I think because Curtis Samuel gets those runs and stuff, he's definitely a guy you want to start. But Carson Wentz, I wouldn't start this week. I think other weeks they'll have some better matchups. The other one is the Miami Dolphin running backs going against Buffalo. I mean, we see what Buffalo just did against Derrick Henry. And with Miami, these two guys haven't been lighting it up anyways. Mostert and Chase Edmonds. So I think those two guys you might want to sit also. Might not have a good week.
Jackal?
That's it. Yep.
Our boy, Mr. Rogers. He's playing against Tampa. He's just not playing all that hot. Definitely averaging 2.4, 214 and a half yards per game. Nothing really to write home about. He's only got a total of 2 touchdowns and an interception, 2 fumbles lost, for a total of just over 20 fantasy points. It's not getting any easier, and his receivers aren't getting any better. I just think he's definitely a sit for us in your fantasy lineups. If you're looking to stream quarterbacks, definitely stay away from him. Mm-hmm. Claudio, I couldn't agree more with you on the running backs for Miami. You talked about sitting Darnell Mooney. But a guy that I'm going to sit is Dawson Knox from Buffalo against Miami, the tight end for the Bills. I just think he's kind of a boom or bust candidate, and he just hasn't necessarily been putting it all together. I don't think week 3 against Miami is going to be the place for it. I'm just not feeling the Dawson Knox love right now, or actually there isn't much of it. But he's my last sit on my start and sit for us.
How about you?
All right. Oh, yeah.
No, you already did yours, right?
No, my sit.
You
No,
no, you didn't.
Not my sits. No. Yeah, my sit, and it's going to be a little bit of a shock, but I'm going to sit Tua. I'm going to sit Tua this week. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to get after that Miami Dolphins front offensive line. I love their defense. Their defense is picked up right where they left off last season, being the number 1 defense in the league. Their pass rush looks excellent with Von Miller. Von Miller was doing things on Monday night to that poor left tackle that it was just like, oh my God, Von, stop doing it to him, please. I believe in the defense of the Buffalo Bills. I don't think you're going to see 6 touchdowns and over 400 yards for Tua Tagovailoa again. Well, at least this week. I think you might see, he might get it to his wide receivers. You might see one of them go off. Maybe it's Tyreek Hill, maybe it's Waddle, but I don't think you're going to see the same performance that you got this past week with that Buffalo defense. So I'm going to go ahead and sit Tua Tagovailoa this week.
No, that's a good pick. I mean, listen, I've been saying this in football in general, but definitely in fantasy too. The only thing consistent is inconsistency. Okay, so you can almost guarantee by week, there's going to be teams and players that are going to look like, the next great thing, and they're going to come down to earth and crash the next week. Because of matchups, because of injuries, because of other things. So I agree. I think that's a good one. I definitely agree with Tua. Let's put this up here. He was asking about Valdez Scantling or Garrett Wilson. I personally think you definitely go Garrett. You drop him and pick up.
MBS.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely. That's a no-brainer.
That's just
like we were saying that the target share that Garrett Wilson's going to get is going to be way over MVS.
It's just better.
Yeah,
it's just I think,
and he's just
better role in the offense. It's just going to get more
because
opportunity.
We were saying before, Mahomes is going to spread it out. It's not going to be a consistent thing of going to these guys every week.
Right.
So with Garrett Wilson, I think he's right there as the number 1 in that team.
Absolutely.
Jets, so,
yeah, I think it's a consensus. Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, definitely. If you guys got other questions, you want to throw some questions out there, go right ahead. But I don't know why it keeps going up. I just trying to close it. So where are we at? What do you guys want to do?
We'll just go ahead and wrap it here, I guess.
Okay.
Had a great conversation with you boys. Had a great week. Real quick, fantasy doing well? Just a quick update. I know we're going to update later on this month. We're going to keep the fantasy league updates spread out a little bit throughout the year. So we're not just always talking about the league constantly and it kind of gets dried out. But good? Thumbs up? Thumbs down?
Yeah, man.
Pretty good?
I mean, yeah, I'm not too excited about my team that I got in the TTNL league, but it's early. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, Herbert, I got Herbert, so that's my big question is obviously what he's going to be. That's another injury that we got to
Yeah, I
we didn't
completely
talk
forgot about
about.
Justin. Yeah,
Yeah,
completely forgot about that.
he's a
Well,
fucking
let's talk about
super
it now.
though.
Let's go ahead. Let's talk about it now.
Well, I mean, obviously that changes a lot for the Chargers if he doesn't play. But I mean, the fact that he came back in and played was encouraging. But I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that play where he could have ran for the first down and he just stopped and just threw it away because he was in so much pain. So I don't think it was a rib fracture. I think it was a cartilage.
It's a fracture in the cartilage.
Yeah. So so hopefully
give him a shot of Demerol. Just don't let the doctor that gave Tyrod Taylor the shot do it, and hopefully you're all right. I think Herbert, because now he's suing. I think the doctor that did that.
Tyrod, Tyrod's suing him. Yeah, hearing some of the people on TV talk about that injury and talk about how hard it is to breathe and looking at it's so taxing on you. You can't breathe, you can't cough, running, and like you said, when he went to pump fake and run, as soon as he lifted that his arm up, it stretched out that cartilage and he was done. Like it's that painful apparently of an injury. But he's a warrior. Dude came in and fired what was it, a 30-yard touchdown?
Yeah. He didn't wince on that one.
Yeah,
didn't zip that shit in there, man. That was sick.
Didn't wince once. And it's just shocking because you saw how I thought he was done. I was like, here it comes, Chase Daniels show, and he marches right back out there and does that. Just a tough dude. Gonna be tough if the Chargers can't go without him for a little bit, but hopefully for fantasy owners and for Chargers fans that doesn't happen. But anyway, guys, let's wrap it up. Great show. Thank you guys, the fans, for watching. Thank you, Jackle and Claudio, for doing this with me every week.
Thank you,
of course. Thank you.
Love doing this.
Thanks,
Love doing this with you guys. Just great show all around. Hopefully, this week's fantasy set lineup is good for you. Hopefully, you guys come up with some wins, and maybe we helped you out a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully we helped you out. Hopefully we had some right predictions, and sure we'll have some wrong ones. But I don't think Jackal will ever want to sit Monty ever again, right?
I'm sitting him again this week in my lineup. Fantasy speaking, so cut it and clip it again to make it sound like I'm talking about real football. Fucktards. I love all you guys.
Yes.
And with that, peace out.
Peace.
What's your fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy. What's your football fantasy?
You come home after a long day, you need football in your life the TTNL way. You tap on your phone after fantasy play. Pause, not like that before you take it the wrong way. You have an idea what players to draft, then tap on a beer like genuine draft. Study all the players, look close at the stats. A QB first, then a top running back. First you hear Cool Kennedy audio, then on your screen you see Jackal, Ivan, and Claudio. It's a take, never lies production. They keep it fantasy with Ivan's porno production.
Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy?